And we want to turn to Nicolle Wallace, who, of course, served as a campaign strategist for McCain's 2008 presidential run and knew him well, and presidential historian and Pulitzer Prize winner Jon Meacham. Guys, good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Nicolle, let's start with you. I mean, a patriot, politician, war hero, a maverick. We've heard that term thrown about a lot over the past few days. What was it about Jon McCain that made him so incredibly special to so many people?
You know, I've heard so much about the fighter, about the toughness. You know, what drew you in as an advisor was the softness, the capacity to soften and melt into the people around him. And, you know, we're going to miss him in the political arena. He was a giant, but he was also that person on the other end of the phone. He called all the time. And he was just this walking, talking, swearing, incredibly intimate friend to everyone around him. And he leaned into all this professional relationships and personal relationships. And you have Mark Salter on at the beginning of the hour. I mean, that was a love affair among burly, manly men, but they loved each other. He told Joe Lieberman he loved him when he left a room. I mean, he was a bundle of raw affection and emotion for the people that meant the most to him. And he had this sense in life that his time here wasn't infinite, and he never left anything unsaid. So to me, it was all the softening. It was the humanity. And it was debilitating sometimes to try to help someone become president who was so acutely aware of their deficiencies, because you know, it wasn't bucking him up. You know, but he didn't have any ability to brag about himself. And you need a little bit of that in politics.
I was going to say, Jon Meacham, as you join the conversation, I mean, I feel like Senator McCain would be mad at us if we didn't include some of his bad qualities in this discussion that lionizes him so much. But I mean, he really was an authentic creature. And if that meant holding grudges sometimes or getting in big old fights with friends and then making up, that was Jon McCain.
He was the man in the arena. He was what Theodore Roosevelt talked about, and he loved the fight. And absolutely, I still have a couple of bruises. I don't know if Nicolle does from various things, but every day was a gift. And it sounds like a needlepoint pillow, but in this case, it's absolutely the case. And it was the ambient reality of his life. He was shot down out of the sky. He lost 5.5 years in the service of his country as a prisoner of war. And every moment after that was something to be celebrated and to be honored. There was a line from Thucydides, from the ancients, that both Senator McCain and Mark Salter loved, which was about that a man should always have a sense of honor in action, a sense of honor in action. And I think that really defines what the senator was all about.
Jon, how much of, I mean, over the past few days, there has been so much written and said about Jon McCain, his life, his legacy. How much of it do you think is also been sort of a result of the current state of our political system, political affairs? I mean, do you think that we are loving on Jon McCain so much for other reasons?
I think that's part of it. I think all of life is about context, unquestionably. He represents something that we like to think we are at our best. And so many people today feel that we're scraping toward our worst. And so absolutely, that we look at him, we think about him, and we think, you know what, that's who we want to be. And that's not a bad legacy.
And Nicolle, as I quickly turn to you, I mean, Jon McCain asked two people to speak and eulogize at his memorial, former political opponents George W. Bush and Barack Obama. And those were bitter fights, lest anyone forget.
That's the softening I talked about. I mean, his capacity for forgiveness, not just in his personal life, but in his public life, was extraordinary. And the respect and the reverence for the office is what so distinguishes him from this moment in our American politics. And the statement after the Helsinki summit was as harsh a critique on policy and conduct as you'll hear about Donald Trump, but it wasn't from a personal place. It was from a reverence for the office of the American presidency. And to the degree that he, parted with this president, it was really about his love for this country and his love for what the office can and should be.
Jon and Nicolle, it's good to get your thoughts this morning. Thank you so much.
Hello, Today fans. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking that button down there and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives.